What a beautiful song that was, sung by the author, by Graham Kendrick. And of course, when he sings something like that, he sings it as the prayer that he wrote. You know, some words from the chorus. Deep wounds of love cry out, Father, forgive. Deep wounds of love cry out, Father, forgive. When you think of what had happened to get there, you know, from Palm Sunday, Jesus had gathered everyone together for what we now know as the Last Supper. And there he shocked them by washing their feet, by taking bread and breaking it, saying, this is my body, by taking a cup, filling it, saying, this is my blood shed for you, predicting what was to happen. And then they went from there to Gethsemane, to the garden, and you can imagine them. They'd all had a glass of wine, they'd eaten, they were relaxing. Well, nearly all of them were relaxing. One wasn't, because he knew what he was going to do. And in the garden, they sat down with their backs against those beautiful, beautiful old olive trees that remain there today. And they fell asleep. And Jesus said, can you not just stay awake for 1 hour? And then the soldiers came. Judas came up to his master, his Lord, put his arms around him and betrayed him with a kiss. It's incredible when you think about the story of this passion. The soldiers arrested him. Ears were cut off, healed, put back on again. The soldiers arrested him, took him to Caiaphas' house. I've been to Caiaphas' house. And where they placed Jesus was like in a conical flask. They lowered him in on a rope. And he was kept there overnight. There's no way out. You can't climb the walls. Imagine being in a flask like that. Been there, put my hand on the wall. It's such a moving place. The disciples, people were outside. Peter was outside. The cock crowed 3 times. But only after Peter had denied his Lord 3 times. I don't know the man. Nothing to do with me, mate. No. You've got the wrong person here. Jesus then taken off to Pilate, the Roman ruler. He could see that this wasn't right. But the chief priests, they were screaming. They needed him out. They needed this Jesus out of the way. Pilate didn't even listen to his wife. He listened to the crowd who were shouting, crucify him, we want Barabbas, let him go. They'd probably never heard of Barabbas. A little bit like crowds come out sometimes now. Never heard of the cause before, but out they all came. And so Pilate washed his hands, cleaned his hands, and said, crucify him. And there he was taken, whipped, scorned, laughed at, through these narrow streets, with people looking at him, a spectacle. People who were saying, Mary, come out, Johnny, come out, look what's happening. As this man carried his cross, kept stumbling. And someone, Simon of Cyrene, was dragged out and said, come on, help carry the cross. Me? Yes, you. Your name will go down in history. And then to the pain of the crucifixion, Calvary, the 3 crosses. I've got a lovely poem here which I'm going to read. It's called Crucifixion. Jesus is nailed to the cross. See, as they strip the robe from off his back and spread his arms and nail them on the cross. The dark nails pierce him and the sky turns black. And love is firmly fastened onto loss. But here, a pure change happens. On this tree, loss becomes gain. Death opens into birth. Here, wounding heals, and fastening makes free. Earth breathes in heaven, heaven roots in earth. And here we see the length, breadth, the height, where love and hatred meet, and love stays true. Where sin meets grace, and darkness turns to light. We see what love can bear and be and do. And here, our Saviour calls us to his side. His love is free. His arms are open wide. And sitting at the foot of the cross was Jesus' mother. Grace, come and tell us about it.
He was thinking of me even then. I couldn't believe it. Despite everything he was going through, the awful stomach-churning agony which seemed to pierce my very soul, he was concerned more about my welfare than his. Yet I shouldn't have been surprised. It was so like Jesus, the way he'd been from a boy, always putting others before himself. I dared to hope that just this once it would be different. That for the first time in his life, he'd look after number one. Why not? Would it have been so wrong? He'd given enough already, hadn't he? Scarcely a moment to himself. The crowds always with him, clamouring, calling, pleading, demanding. Enough to break any lesser man. And as if that wasn't enough, his enemies had been there stalking him, unable to conceal their hatred, watching his every move, waiting for their moment. He knew what they were up to, yet he continued without a murmur of complaint. Always having time, always ready to respond. Nothing and no one outside his concern. I saw him so many times, just about all in, drained to the point of exhaustion. And I can't tell you how much it troubled me to see my wonderful lad pouring himself out in a constant act of sacrifice, pushing himself to the very limit. It was always useless to argue. I tried it sometimes, and he simply smiled at me in that gentle way of his, knowing I understood full well that there was no other way. He was right. I knew that. And I knew equally there was no way he'd come down from that cross. But I could still hope, couldn't I? Still pray I might be wrong? He was thinking of others even then. Not only me, but a common thief hanging there beside him, my fellow women sobbing their hearts out. Even those who hounded him to death, thinking, in fact, of everyone except himself. Our next hymn is O Sacred Head, Sore Wounded.